Welcome to Her Body and Mind podcast. I'm Amanda Sarich, clinical counselor, and this is
Dr. Ciera Fox.
Today we are going to be talking about a potentially triggering topic. So trigger warning. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, a really, really important topic, a space where I've spent, the majority of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I think before we even launch into it, something that I just want to note as you listen to this, if something sounds familiar and you're like, oh, that sounds sort of familiar, I think that's not a coincidence. And that's the whole point of why we're doing this.
Yep.
So just take that with you on the rest of this episode.
Yeah.
And here we go.
All right. Well, why don't you start us off and tell us what is abuse?
So I think, abuse is anything that impacts us negatively that has a pattern. So I think there's so many words now, hey, that are thrown around all the time. That's abuse. Or next episode, I'm going to talk a lot about gaslighting and narcissism. Also words that have been that are very serious, that have become
popular or
and mislabeled and diluted, unfortunately, because they're very serious. Same with the word abuse. It's oh, that's abuse. And it's something can be not great and abusive without being an abusive relationship.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, but you're just very careful around minimizing bad behavior. But like you said, there's elements to it, criteria, which are there's patterns to it versus a one-off something where and then it never happened again. Different, not good, but it's not the same.
No. And that's the pattern.
Yeah.
So an abusive relationship or domestic violence is a pattern. Now, of course, in domestic violence, we can have one-offs that are still abusive that are violent.
Yep.
So if you are physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, those are abusive
Totally.
and don't have to exist into a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're talking about here is more the quieter abuse.
Yes.
The abuse that happens in your kitchen, the abuse that happens over text message, the abuse that occurs that we're is it? It feels not right. And it kind of looks like a bad relationship, but it's actually an abusive relationship.
And that's exactly why we're doing this. So you can identify in case you weren't aware that maybe you're existing in this and didn't know.
And I have this conversation, unfortunately, constantly in my office because I think that there is so much normalizing of bad behavior, and for women, so much internalizing bad behavior from others, and societally being taught to hold space for other people and kind of make excuses for other people.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when women, usually women, not always, men can be survivors of domestic violence as well.
Definitely.
But often when people are in my office, breaking that apart for people and being to me, this sounds like an abusive relationship. And often people are what? No. And I'm
yeah.
Because it's so clearly to me fits into this pattern of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot to realize.
It is a lot to realize. So if you're listening to this, I think just be gentle, be kind, be curious. There is so much value in labeling things for what they are, though. And that's what we want to do here today.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to talk about the cycles of abuse.
Yeah.
But first, I'm going to talk about how do we define abuse? And one way is through something called the power and control wheel.
Yes,
we have it in front of us here.
Yes, we do.
You can Google this power and control wheel. It is everywhere. And so what it is, it's a wheel. But what's powerful about this is that it's called the power and control wheel for a reason.
Yep.
So patterns are something that exist for all abusive relationships, but the other truth that exists in all abusive relationships is that it is coming from a place of power and control.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this power and control gets a bit confusing and diluted because it isn't always, nor does it have to be intentional.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be well, no, my partner's not trying. My partner's not meaning to.
Mm-hmm.
But when we break it down, all abuse comes from a need to power and control.
Yeah.
Irregardless of the reason, which we'll talk about as we carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So let's just kind of go through all of them. I'll read them right from here, just because then if you look them up, it's exactly what we've seen or what I'm talking about. So on the wheel, the middle is power and control, because that is the foundation of all abusive relationships. And then on the outside of the wheel, we see physical and sexual violence.
Yeah.
So these are the ones that are most likely to be like, the police are called most often for these. These are most likely to find themselves in a courtroom. But these almost never exist without the inside, which I'll talk about how cycles of violence increase.
Like the escalation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those almost never happen without the inside.
Yep.
So those are easier to note. And in our next episode, I'm going to talk a lot about emotional abuse. But what I find, and what I have found working in women's shelters, what I have found working in women's centers, is that although physical violence is obviously terrible, the inside stuff is harder because it's a little bit more, it's not gray, but it feels gray.
Yep.
And the damage is sometimes worse than physical violence.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah.
Long term,
right?
Yeah.
Because it's quieter.
Yeah.
So we'll start with using coercion. I'm not saying that word probably right, but you know what I mean. And threats. So making and carrying out threats to do something to hurt you. So this one's a little bit more obvious. So it's like, if you do this, then I'm going to harm you. In really kind of tumultuous situations, using threats to drop charges once there has been charges, which has changed a little bit lately now. When police are called to domestic violence, often police have changed where they're charging if they see something, irregardless of what the victim wants to do, which is a bit of a change.
Say that again.
So police are called to domestic violence. A problem in domestic violence is that because there's so much manipulation, gaslighting, that when it comes down to it, do you want to charge this person? The answer is usually no.
Totally. They ask and you say no.
You say no. But sometimes, from my understanding, if the police have witnessed something, the police will do their own charging.
Oh, but they would have to witness it then, which would be rare.
Well, not always rare, but yeah. So there is some changes, and domestic violence within policing has changed a little bit in that they have their own special units, which is an improvement.
That is good.
And so they're like checking in on victims a bit later. The thing to note, if you're listening to this though, is that there's not really a time that passes where you can't like place charges. It's harder the more time that goes on, but because these things are happening behind closed doors, there's no real stat on time. Just like sexual violence, you can decide to press charges at any time. You could decide to, you see this in historical sexual assault cases, right? We're seeing people pressing charges against people that harmed them in childhood.
Yep.
Right. And so it's not, I like to call our justice system the second assault, because that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's a complicated space, but I think knowledge is power, and it's still helpful to know that there is always space to press charges. Convictions different. That means we have to have like evidence in a whole court trial.
Yeah.
But charges can always be laid. So I digress there. But
do you think do police actually know this fact, or do they? Because I feel like I think the police themselves might have a skewed version of what they relay to people about this. Like,
yeah, I think they see enough in court that I think there's good cops and there's bad cops and there's cops in between. And I think that if it's very historical, there's no evidence, and you're like, 10 years ago, my partner hit me, the likelihood that makes its way to trial is zero, but you still have the right to press that charge. You still have the right to make that file. It's probably not necessarily going to go anywhere, but you can, and this is so evident in sexual abuse. Look at how many people, like Judge Kavanaugh, that big judge in the States, like women were coming out of all over and saying like, yeah, he abused me 20 years ago. Look at the Epstein files.
Oh yeah.
Right. All of those things are historical violence.
Yes.
And so it's just hard because evidence is complicated, which is a whole other episode on the problems in our justice system and problems in policing. But okay. So this power and control wheel. And I think, just circling back, violence doesn't always look like this like reportable thing. Domestic violence is often very quiet at first.
Yes. Yes, it is. Very quiet.
So the next one on the wheel is using intimidation. This one feels, again, a little bit more like loud, but not necessarily. So making this is very also in a heterosexual relationship. So this is very like for man and woman, but abuse happens in female, male, hetero. Polyamorous abuse can exist in any type where anytime there's two people, abuse can happen.
Two people.
Or three or four, whatever. Abuse can happen. But making you afraid by using actions, gestures, smashing things, which is technically physical abuse, destroying property, abusing pets, displaying weapons. So as we go through there, it becomes a lot more serious, but abuse can be rolling your eyes at someone constantly. Oh, you're so frustrating. Over time, if that's patterned, that's abusive.
Right.
Then the next one, which is what we're going to talk a lot about next episode because it requires its own episode, is emotional abuse.
Totally.
Right? Yeah. And so this is the quiet stuff. This is the thing that makes you feel bad, but you are told that you're being too much. This is a partner who's never happy, who's always criticizing you, this is where it starts to look like kind of just a bad relationship, or a partner who's like got some stuff, but over time is chipping away at your well-being and sense of self.
Yep.
So it gets...
Yep.
Yeah. Essentially, this one makes you feel like you're going crazy.
Yeah. It also notes playing mind games, humiliating her, making her feel guilty. Yeah. So those are just like...
Yeah.
Little pieces.
Which I will talk about for probably 45 minutes next episode. Isolation is another big one, which tends to indicate that the cycle of abuse is getting worse. So when we start to see isolation through friends, family, and other sources work, that's very common. And again, this doesn't always look loud. This is like, your friends are so much. Do we have to go there again? Or like, your family is so annoying. Like, I don't want to spend time with them because they make me feel bad. And it's just little by little, our world gets smaller and smaller, which makes abuse a lot easier to continue. This is another big one, which is technically in the category of emotional abuse, but in this power and control wheel, minimizing, denying, and blaming, which is like gaslighting, which is emotional abuse. But this happens a lot too. So if you're in a relationship and you're saying to your partner, hey, like when you do this, it makes me feel this way. And they're like, no, I don't do that. What are you talking about? You're so dramatic. Like, why do you have to make a big deal out of everything?
Oh gosh.
That's minimizing, denying, or blaming, which is a lot fits under gaslighting, but that is like, again, it makes you question your own reality.
100%.
And labeling these behaviors when it's happening to be like, oh, I heard on a podcast that this is abusive. That's helpful, even just for your own internal like dialogue, because that's starting to kind of pull away from that internalized kind of crazy making to be like, that's abusive. So maybe it's not me.
So every time it happens, you have that thought, like, it's a reminder, like, oh, that thought comes up a lot, actually. Maybe there's a pattern. Yeah, totally.
I will talk about this at the end, but what I mean by notice to yourself first. Domestic violence relationships can escalate, and a lot of women are not in escalated relationships because they are doing a really good job of keeping their partner not mad. And so anything domestic violence, we have to just take safety as a real consideration.
Totally.
And it's not that you eventually shouldn't start calling some of this stuff out, but just I've seen it go bad so many times. Just be cautious. Hopefully your partner isn't capable of violence, but many people have been surprised.
Yeah.
Using children. So this is a huge one. So either using children as pawns in your relationship, using them against you. Oh, look, guys, mom's being mom again, like that kind of stuff is abusive. If you're separated, using visitation, that kind of stuff is still abusive, which is very common. And then there's less you can do about it because
Yeah, that's hard.
Our justice system is a dumpster fire.
Yeah, totally.
But very common. And still, if you're separated and safe physically from your partner, labeling those things as abusive is helpful for you, because then even maybe being like, maybe I should go to therapy and like start processing this because I'm still being abused, because that is abusive.
It doesn't end, especially in those
No.
kind of relationships, because then they've totally like lost control in certain ways. So they try other avenues, which would be that.
Exactly. So power and control.
Yeah.
So when you lose control, you want to get it back.
Yeah.
Using male privilege. So again, male, this is focused on heterosexual, but privilege can be used in same-sex relationships as well. But this is very common. To be careful here. This is very common in like a lot of traditional spaces, whether that be traditional communities, faith-based organizations. And the thing with male privilege is that if it fits your worldview and you also subscribe to a more like traditional worldview where like the man maybe works and you're the homemaker, then that's not abusive.
No.
Absolutely not.
No.
It's when it doesn't work for you, and then it's like positioned as like there's something wrong with you because you're just not understanding that he shouldn't have to do domestic labor.
It's one person dictating what the roles are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this one gets kind of mashed up a bit because no one gets to define what abuse is. Well, unless sometimes, but in some of these kind of nuanced places, like you can be traditional, good for you.
Yeah.
That works for a lot of people.
Totally.
Not abusive.
No.
But if you don't want to make dinner and it's positioned as you have to,
and there's unequitable distribution of things and you're standing up for that.
Yeah.
But it's being reinforced that that is your duty, your role.
Yeah.
Because of your sex or whatever.
Yeah. Or faith or whatever.
Faith, yeah.
And then the piece is like you're made to feel like you have no right to have that opinion. Then it does become abusive.
Yeah.
Which does exist in a lot of spaces where traditions are the norm.
Yeah.
And so then it makes it even harder to stand up for it when you're in a community or a culture where that is the way. So there's so many areas in this where it's really hard to find your voice or find footing.
Yeah. And I feel like as much as we like to think it's like we're living in 2026 and, you know, like, you know, everyone's up to speed now and there's equality and, you know, it's swung too far over this side for women now. But that, I mean, realistically, no, it's still very strong as far as like female, male roles or whatever you want to label them as. Like it still exists because the parents pass it on to the kids and then the kids grow up and they then just behave exactly like their parents. So it's not that easy to break that pattern, even within a socialization process. Like
Absolutely.
It's just not.
And unfortunately, what has been deemed normalized behavior within relationships historically is abusive.
Yeah.
I mean, you used to be able to literally beat or rape your wife. I know that's a trigger word, but I think there's still value in using it sometimes because it goes, whoop. But that used
legally,
to be
you said legally you were
absolutely.
And when did that change? You know what that like historically?
I don't know the
like
year. I know it somewhere in my brain, but right now I don't. I'll have it for us next time. But it changed.
I do want to know how long it took for
you
that
used to
change.
be able to like beat your wife with something that was no thicker than a certain thing, and you could never get convicted for sexual assault within a marriage. Like it just wasn't a thing. But women used to not be able to vote either. So we've come away, but we're not there yet.
I'm just wondering what came. I feel like the vote probably came first. I don't know why.
Women's rights. Women fought for a lot of things. And I think the idea that the fought is fought and won is so difficult because that's not the case.
No, it's not.
Especially when you're like me and you're sitting in these spaces with women that are continuing to be abused. Or the statistic that 1 in 5 are women are physically, sexually abused. Like, and that's underreported. So that's, you sit in a room with 5 women, the likelihood that one of them's been assaulted sexually, like we ain't at the mark yet, people. So if you're listening to this and you're getting triggered, I'm just so acutely aware of the words I'm using. Turn it off, take a minute. Don't just keep listening because you're a trauma survivor and you're good at white knuckling. These are hard things. Part of this is if you're in a relationship where the big T, we've talked about that in other episodes.
Yes, we did.
Big T trauma isn't happening. then you're kind of more curious. But if you have experienced big T trauma, the words I'm using makes your chest go tight and you go into a cold sweat. So stop if you need to, but come back.
Yep.
Okay. And then economic abuse, another really quiet, complicated form of domestic violence, especially because it kind of lends itself to this like male dominance, power and control.
I make more money than you. I make the money.
I make the rules.
Yeah.
Right. Monitoring everything. Well, why'd you buy that? Not having freedom within your relationship, and then being emotionally harmed because choices you made didn't fit whoever the abuser is. Yeah. When it comes to economic abuse, we see a lot of that power and control feel a lot clearer.
Yeah.
Because it's like clearly like power is finances, but where to live. Oh, no. Oh, I don't want to choose that house you want. I make the money. You don't get to say stuff with kids. Oh, they can't do that sport. I make the money. I make the rules.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Yeah. And then that's the wheel.
It's the wheel.
There's a lot of variations to all of those things. Yeah. But those are like the broader definitions of what we see in domestic violence.
Probably more than what people would actually have considered.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why this sheet, like, look it up. But this sheet is helpful to look at. I give it away in my office still all the time because when you look at it, it's like,
just circle all the things. Like, oh, that's me. That's me. Oh, no.
Ooh, right. And there's this thing and it says violence. And it's like, oh.
It's a good visual.
It's a good visual.
As long as you're not going to get like triggered. But yeah, like, I mean, I do this in a different version with people's diaries, like whatever. I'm like, okay, well, let's just like circle. It's like nice to have it on one sheet and you can actually see it all together. And you're like, oh, damn.
Yeah.
You don't really realize until you like see it all together and you're like, it's probably worse than what I thought. And I've probably been minimizing it for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And that's very true here.
Yeah.
Okay. The next piece to talk about when we talk about domestic violence is the cycle of abuse. So the cycle of abuse is critical in understanding if you're in an abusive relationship, because I can and have always been able to plot abusive relationships into the same cycle. So the cycle is event or explosion. So this isn't always loud. This doesn't always look like yelling and screaming, but let's use more overt violence as an example.
Okay.
But so this might look like a fight where he, she, they yell at you. So like, you're such an idiot, big event, explosion. Then what is after that? We call it the honeymoon phase.
Yep.
So I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh, I lost my temper, makeup, sex, gifts, more increase of domestic labor, doing more around the house, just like things feel really good. And then there's tension. So waiting because it's starting to feel kind of off, explosion, honeymoon, tension, explosion, etc. Now, this cycle isn't always obvious at first. It becomes obvious in more big T trauma stuff, but there's almost always a cycle.
Yeah.
And the thing with this cycle that's really complicated is it becomes quite addicting.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because the fight is bad. No one wants the fight. No one wants to be yelled at. No one likes to be gaslit. But for a lot of people, that honeymoon phase is like delightful and it's dopamine rich.
Yeah.
It's all the things, right? And it's like, oh, there he is.
That's him, her.
There they are.
Yeah.
I wonder, I knew they were in there. And then tension, 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 tension. What happens over time, almost always, and the research supports me on this, is that cycle tightens. So at first we might have an explosion, a fight, honeymoon that lasts quite a long time, no real tension. It's kind of like people are like, I'm not on that cycle. Yeah. But over time,
it gets closer together.
Yeah. And then we see explosion, honeymoon, less tension, longer. Honeymoon almost always goes away.
Yeah.
Not always, but often. Tension gets more intense. There's a lot of women in my career who I've talked to, and women do this unconsciously, is they'll like pick a fight to get to the explosion, to get out of the tension.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's so uncomfortable.
Yeah. They're like, it's just like waiting. They're like, let's just get this over with.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And tension, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know, is that me? It's like, do you ever walk on eggshells with your partner? And again, in a patterned way, like we can all walk on eggshells. Me and Ciera talk a lot about perimenopause. I think my husband walks on a few eggshells like a week, right? But it's not a pattern where I'm abusing him, right?
No.
So a little bit of like being cautious, like careful, not even careful. If you're being aware of your partner's needs and sometimes they're a bit off, yes. But if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, so you find yourself looking at things and being like, oh shoot, I'm gonna fix this here so they don't get mad, or I shouldn't park there because I think, oh yep, and you find yourself like doing a lot of things that feel anxious. That's eggshell walking. And the hard part with this is that for a lot of people, this is what they've known since childhood. And so the thing with domestic violence and cycles of abuse is that they feel very much like home and they feel like all you've ever known. And so labeling them as an abusive pattern feels outrageous.
Inorganic because you're just used to it.
You're used to it. It's the most comfortable thing. And last point, I could talk forever about this. You were right. I was like, this would be a short episode.
Not a short episode. I don't know what time we're at, but
the thing with these patterns is that once you're in them for a long time, your barometer of what's okay gets very skewed. And so I cannot count how many women have been in these type of relationships, significant or kind of less intense versions. And then they're with someone healthy and they're like, I'm so bored. He's so vanilla. And I'm like, he's just not abusive. And they're like, you're what? Because it's so like
highs, lows, high, lows.
Dopamine. Yeah. It's like so exciting is the wrong word, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the other and last point. So the cycle tightens over time. Now, there's 3 ways that this stops.
Okay.
One partner takes accountability, which can happen, and gets serious intervention.
Yep.
I say serious intervention because acknowledging you are driving a cycle of abuse and then saying you won't do it anymore is not a serious intervention.
No, because usually it ends up happening again. It's like, you're just going to magically stop. You think, well, you would have before if it was that easy. It's not that easy.
Not that easy.
Just to be clear.
Just to be clear.
That's why they keep saying sorry and then it doesn't change.
And you're still in this like, that's just a different version of honeymoon, right? Being like, oh, you're right. Shit, I am. So I'll stop.
Yeah.
Sorry, honey. Honeymoon. So we need to take accountability and start really looking at how we have to make change. And often that requires therapy, especially if
you're
there's
talking
a
about
cycle.
The abuser, right?
Yeah. Abuser.
So that's option 1.
Option 1. Option 2, the relationship ends. Option 3, someone dies.
Well, that's not a good option.
Those are the only 3 ways out of this. It will never, ever, ever, ever change otherwise. And this is the piece that people don't always like to connect to. Time doesn't make it better. Time makes it worse. People don't change unless they take the steps to figure out their parts.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to vilify people that are driving this cycle always. People can change. I've seen it a lot.
Yep.
But those are the only ways out.
Yep. Those are the options.
And if you're starting to see red flags in your relationship, you're starting to see like, oh, we are kind of in a bit of a cycle. That's where you want intervention early to be like, how do maybe we go to couples, maybe we both do some of our own work or you do your own work, because it will get worse.
Yeah. Inevitably.
Unfortunately.
Sorry.
But good to know, right? So I think that's enough for today. The value of labeling though. Labeling because you don't deserve to be treated this way. And if any of this is happening, I can guarantee you if you're not driving the cycle, then it's not your fault.
Yeah.
This is happening to you.
Yeah.
Even if you're being told you are causing it. You're not.
Which is more often the case.
Always the case.
Yeah.
Not always. Very often.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's hard if you're in a relationship like this. They're everywhere, but if you're not driving the cycle, that's such a clear way to put it.
Yeah.
Then it's not your fault. You're not doing it.
Yeah. And some people will struggle identifying whether they are or aren't just because of the gaslighting and all that. So it's tricky. And if you're questioning it, but you're not sure, then yeah, that's where you seek professional help and see like, how do I figure this out? I am unsure. Yeah.
And then just cautious with safety, right? Anything with domestic violence has a high risk factor, especially if the cycle has progressed over time. Women get killed in this cycle. Leaving domestic violence requires a lot of thought, attention, and support, especially if your relationship is quite violent. I have some numbers here just that I want to throw out there. So 988 suicide hotline. In our area, 1-800-563-0808 is Victim Link BC. So you can call there and talk to someone in a crisis support capacity. Or 310-6789, no area code needed, BC-wide mental health and crisis support. Outside of BC, Google it. If you're not in BC and you're listening to this, I guarantee you your
something
province,
exists like
something
that.
exists.
Yeah.
So stay safe out there. It's not your fault. And reach out if you have comments, questions, concerns.
Yeah.
Send this to a friend if they're in an abusive relationship. There's support for you. There is. And starting to label it as the first step.
Definitely.
Okay.
Okay, well, good episode. Very informative. And next time we are talking about
emotional abuse, gaslighting, and narcissism. So what this looks like and broken down more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, we'll see you next episode.
Bye. Please contact your own healthcare providers before you make any changes to your health and wellness protocols related to your body and mind.